Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Sri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So yesterday we finished the chapter 30. Before others come, any quick reflections?
Darius temple. First temple in Europe.
Yeah,
established.
That's okay. That's date install was done. This is Radha
That was the main thing to be done.
And then
friendship with George Harrison.
Yeah, George Harrison sponsored, gave $19,000, right? Prabhupada has not left, or later he will. Okay.
He will about to leave after the.
Yeah, because Prabhupada is going to ask money. No, that's the book actually, $19,000. Yeah, I thought he will give more. Maybe later.
He's not fully into Krishna consciousness.
Maybe he will give later more. Then, what else?
He got the deities from an Indian family.
Yeah, Mr. Doyle.
Yeah, Mr.
Doyle's family. How Krishna manifested miraculously. He manifested. That's mysticism. Then there was very less time, and the temple Prabhupada gave priority. It was not possible, but Prabhupada said it needs to be inaugurated by what is that date? August? No, November.
December 14th.
December 14th. The date. So Syam Sundar Prabhu used the teakwood, California teakwood, which they had got redwood, so which they had got earlier, and he made a very nice carving and everything. Worked very hard, day and night, and altar and everything. Yeah, Mother Yamuna made the dresses for the deities. And what else? Tamal Krishna Maharaj came. I don't know. He came and he assisted, encouraged. He had the program and everything outside. They moved out of John Yoka's house to the temple apartment. There's a separate apartment for the Prabhupada, but he preferred to stay with devotees so he can supervise the progress. So he moved to the temple itself. What else we discussed in that chapter? You remember anything, Nipa? Huh?
Yes, it was the same like Yamuna Mata made the saffron color choices when she's describing how there are many pictures of Krishna revealing that he wears different kinds of clothes and everything. And then Prabhupada described what kind of clothes with the borders, and saffron is the best.
Prabhupada, before they left that house, John's house, he looked at all the plants and everything. And next day there was a storm. Remember, all the trees got uprooted after Prabhupada left, and the windows broke. Don't know why.
Only in that state.
Huh?
It was at that state. It wasn't anything else.
Is it? Yeah. Because I hope they didn't offend Prabhupada.
He was kind of offended.
Sorry?
He was kind of.
Yeah, he was little,
The way they
but they served at least something. So chapter 31, a threat against ISKCON. Let's see what is coming up. Boston, December 21st, 1969. Wow. So how many temples? We have only 21 temples, right? Yeah? I think 20.
More than 20.
No, more than 20, 24 maybe, I forgot the number. So Boston, December 21st, 1967. More than 100 of More than 100 of Prabhupada's disciples and followers are in the lobby of the International Terminal of Boston's Logan Airport. Kirtananda Swami has come from New Vrindavan with a truckload of devotees. The devotees from New York are here with a large banner. New York ISKCON welcomes Srila Prabhupada, or to receive Prabhupada. Okay. Most of the devotees wear heavy coats over their dhotis and saris and are chanting Hare Krishna. Some play drums and cymbals. A few babies and children are present. Waiting passengers can only watch startled. Prabhupada's plane is late and the devotees continue chanting after leaping into the air with outstretched arms. They haven't seen Prabhupada in a long time and they're waiting, expecting to see him in any moment. Oblivious of the proprieties of being in public, the devotees chant emotionally, building almost to uncontrolled ecstasy. The state police step into tell the biggest devotee, Brahmananda, cool it. The chanting falls away to a murmur of japa. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. The plane from London arrives. The devotees are unable to see the passengers entering in the glassed immigration and customs area because the bottom 6 feet of the glass wall is painted black. Straining to see over the top, the devotees press forward, chanting feverish, some almost hysterical. Suddenly they see Prabhupada's raised hand with bead bag on the other side of the wall. They can see only his raised hand and bead bag. They go wild. Fearlessly, with drums and kartals, the kirtan explodes again. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Advaita is tearfully smashing the kartals together and chanting. Brahmananda, jumping up and down, trying to glimpse into the customs room, is crying uncontrollably and yelling, Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, free of customs. Srila Prabhupada, free of customs, suddenly appears before them. Kirtananda Swami, reserved until now, leaves around airport chairs and runs to him. Now everyone is pushing and running, trying to be where Prabhupada is. Such a beautiful scene to see on December 21st in Boston. Prabhupada arrives. Boston looks like in 1969, where Kirtananda Swami also brings a bus load. Is bus load of the devotees? Truckload of the devotees, not bus. From that for almost how many hours? Almost 10, 12 hours. Yeah. Yeah, no, at least, yeah, 12 hours, Paul, yeah. So, and many others, all devotees join and the sign, banner, New York ISKCON welcomes Srila Prabhupada, so New York ISKCON welcomes Prabhupada. They are so missing for Prabhupada for so many months, they were not seen. It's a winter, it's a December, must be very, very cold. That's the Christmas time. And everyone is anxious, jumping and dancing, but flight was delayed. Then flight comes, and they all were curious because if Prabhupada is there on water, everything. So as soon as they saw Prabhupada hand, and they all started screaming, jumping, and dancing. Kirtan also ran to Prabhupada, and everyone went. They go wild, and trying to be where Prabhupada is. Got it?
Prabhupada's saffron robes are wrinkled from the long flight, and he wears a knit sweater. He holds his white plastic attaché case in his left hand and again raises his right arm with forefinger and thumb extending from the bead bag. He smiles wonderfully, beaming to his children. Devotees cheer and cry, "All glories to Prabhupada." As he walks toward a saffron-covered sofa in the airport lounge, devotees move with him in an ecstatic wave, pressing him close. He sits down. Brahmananda from New Vrindavan comes forward with his infant son, the first boy born in ISKCON, and holds him forward to Prabhupada for blessings. Prabhupada is smiling. The devotees are completely, unabashedly blissful. Where's Hayagriva? Prabhupada asks. The question is repeated by the devotees, and big Hayagriva lurches through the crowd, grumbling and falling flat at Prabhupada's feet in obeisances. One by one, the leaders of the various ISKCON centers come forward and place a garland after garland around Prabhupada. Prabhupada looks beyond the wall of devotees at the newsmen with their cameras and at the baffled, curious, and disdainful onlookers. A bystander says, I think he must be some kind of politician. So Prabhupada begins speaking. The spiritual master is to be worshipped as God. But if he's thinking that he is God, then he is useless. My request is, please don't take Krishna consciousness as a sectarian religion. Prabhupada explains that Krishna consciousness is a great science, culminating in pure love of God. These boys and girls had never heard of Krishna before, Prabhupada continues, but now they have taken it up so naturally, because it is natural. Prabhupada says that he is an old man, yet he is sure that even if he passes away, his students will continue the Krishna consciousness movement. The potency of this movement is such that it can awaken awareness of God within anyone's heart. After the lecture, Prabhupada stands and is escorted outside, where a limousine waits to drive him off through the newly fallen snow. So as Prabhupada comes near the devotees, he smiles beamingly and looks at his disciples. And he's also very happy, and the devotees are also happy, and they're all chanting, all glories to Prabhupada. And as he walks towards a sofa, a saffron-covered sofa, and all the devotees move with him and ecstatically and want to sit close to him. And then Paramananda Prabhu from New Vrindavan brings forth his infant son, the first boy born in ISKCON. He holds him to Prabhupada for blessings. Then Prabhupada asks, where is Hayagriva? And Hayagriva Prabhu comes through the crowd and falls at Prabhupada's feet. And then one by one, all the leaders of the various ISKCON centers come and place a garland around Prabhupada. Then while all the devotees are there talking to Prabhupada, the onlookers and newsmen are all baffled and curious. And one bystander says, oh, he must be some kind of politician. And so Prabhupada begins speaking, saying that spiritual master is to be worshipped as God, but if the spiritual master thinks that he is God, then he is useless. The Prabhupada tells them that don't take Krishna consciousness as sectarian religion. These boys and girls have never heard of Krishna before, but now naturally they have taken it up. And Prabhupada believes that even if he passes away, his students, his disciples will continue the Krishna conscious movement and spread it all over the world. And that this potency of the movement is to awaken the awareness of God within everyone's and anyone's heart. And then after the lecture, Prabhupada is escorted into a limousine to drive him off.
Riding joyfully in the car with Prabhupada were Kirtanananda Swami, Brahmananda, Satsarups, and Purushottama, a professional chauffeur drove. Prabhupada talked of London. It was an old aristocratic city, he said, and the temple was in a very influential area near the British Museum. The location is what it is called downtown. They passed a large billboard advertising a restaurant and lounge, Continental. On seeing the billboard, Prabhupada said, Chintamani, what is that? Oh no, Continental. The devotees looked at one another. Chintamani. Prabhupada had thought that the sign had read Chintamani, meaning the spiritual gems that make up the transcendental land of Krishna Loka. But Prabhupada himself was Chintamani, pure and innocent, coming to the cold, dirty city of Boston, yet always thinking of Krishna wherever he was. How fortunate to be with him. Satsarup glanced at the professional chauffeur. Drive carefully, he said. Prabhupada spoke softly from the back seat, while the devotees in front peered back, barely able to see him in the darkness and completely awed by his friendly yet inconceivable presence. The other day he said, I told George Harrison that if he thought his money belongs to him, that was Maya. At the Sumner Tunnel, Sumner Tunnel, the limousine pulled up at an automatic toll booth. The driver threw a coin into the chute and the red light turned green. Prabhupada asked if sometime people drove through without paying, and Brahmanand replied that an alarm would go off. They moved ahead in the Sumner Tunnel, usually an airy, never raking place, but not when riding with Prabhupada.
Hmm. So Prabhupada was very joyfully received by the devotees. Um, I think they understand really, they're really very grateful how they got this Krishna conscious movement. From their actions, we can see how they are feeling grateful, always appreciative of Prabhupada. So that's why they receive and they serve and very joyfully. That's a very nice thing to take. Looks like Prabhupada drove with Kirtanananda Swami and Brahmananda Sasrup and Purushottama Prabhus. And a driver was there, they're asking to make sure. So on the way they see, um, and the temple was in a very influential area near the British Museum. Sasur Maharaj actually created that temple, right? When he came by Prabhupada's instruction. It's called downtown. And he sees a billboard. Somehow it writes Continental, but he reads as Chintamani. So devotees understand how Prabhupada is always in the mind of thinking of Krishna, and they think that Prabhupada himself is a Chintamani, and pure innocent coming to the cold and dirty place like Boston, thinking of Krishna wherever he was. They are witnessing this Prabhupada, otherwise they will not, Americans won't very easily just do all these things. Anyways, Prabhupada spoke very softly, and he mentioned that, he said, informed George Harrison that if he thinks this money belongs to him, it is Maya. So Prabhupada is inquisitive to see how the toll booth works. You put a coin and you drive. So he's asking, if you don't put the coin, what's going to happen? So devotees are saying there'll be alarm. Those days there's be alarm. Now it's a big ticket comes to your home. Things changes. Okay, Nipa, you please read. Oh, one second. Yeah. Did I move? Miss? Yeah.
At this, I told George, right? I told George to give his money to Krishna, Prabhupada said. Not that he had to give it to Krishna by giving it to me necessarily, but that somehow or other he must spend all of his money for Krishna. But you are the only way to Krishna, Brahmananda said. Prabhupada laughed lightly. Yes, he admitted, at least in the West. This was the great privilege of being able to ride with Prabhupada, to hear him say little things or serious things, and to see his fathomless expression or his kind smiling. It was a rare opportunity. I am representing unadulterated teachings, Prabhupada continued. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, surrender to me, and I say surrender to Krishna. It is very simple. So many Swamis come and present themselves as Krishna, and it is all spoiled. But I say surrender to Krishna. I do not say surrender anything new or adulterated. Krishna says surrender to me, and I say surrender to Krishna. Prabhupada asked Brahmananda if 50,000 copies of Back to Godhead magazine were being printed. Brahmananda answered that they were. Good, Prabhupada replied. Turning his attention to Satyaswarupa, Prabhupada asked how the composing machine was working, and Satyaswarupa said that the hundred of pages were being composed each month. Prabhupada asked Kirtanananda Swami about New Vrindavan. New Vrindavan would improve, Prabhupada said. The only thing wrong was that it got blocked up in the winter. Each devotee in the car felt completely satisfied by his brief exchange with Prabhupada, and they rode with him intoxicated in spiritual bliss. Most of the devotees had raced ahead to the temple on Beacon Street and were waiting excitedly. The limousine pulled up, and again the devotees were unrestrained in their adoration of their spiritual master. Regally, Prabhupada walked up the walkway onto the porch steps, through the front door, and into the vestibule, where he gazed around at the purple walls and the pink and green doorways. Surrounded by cheers and loving looks, he smiled. So in these paragraphs, Prabhupada says to George to give this money to Krishna, and he had not that he had to give it to Krishna giving uh, by giving it to him necessarily, but somehow other he must spend all of his money for Krishna only. And Brahmananda said, "But you are the only way to Krishna." Prabhupada replied, saying that yes, at least in the West, he admitted. This was like a great privilege able to ride with Prabhupada. And in the ride, it explains Prabhupada asked Brahmananda if 50,000 copies of Back to Godhead magazine were printed, and Brahmananda said, answered they were. So Prabhupada was happy with the thing. He said, "Good." And he turned to Satyaswarupa and asked about the composing machine was working. If and Satyaswarupa said yes, hundreds of pages were being composed every month. And Prabhupada then asked Kirtanananda about New Vrindavan and also mentioned that it would improve. The only thing is like because of the winter, it got blocked up. Each devotee in the car was feeling like satisfied, completely satisfied with Prabhupada, and they rode like intoxicated with his spiritual presence. And most of the devotees raced on the ahead to the temple on Beacon Street. They were waiting for Prabhupada. When the limousine kind of pulled up, there were devotees unrestrained and in their adoration of Prabhupada. And Prabhupada walked up the porch steps through the front door into the vestibule and gazed around the purple walls and pink and green doorways. Surrounded by cheers and loving, he smiled.
Second.
The second floor parlor, now the temple room, was filled with more than 150 disciples and guests, and they could see Prabhupada's form rise into view as he came up the stairs. He still carried his white attaché case in his left hand and his bead bag in his right. Although he had just come out of the winter's night, he wore no coat, only cotton robes and a sweater. He appeared radiant. Prabhupada approached the altar. He seemed to notice everything. The small Radha Krishna deities enthroned beneath a red velvet canopy. The larger deities of Jagannath, Subhadra, and Balram on a raised shelf above the picture of Lord Chaitanya and his Sankirtan party. Even the brass arti paraphernalia, brightly shining on the small table near the altar. Turning to his secretary and traveling companion, Purushottam asked, "What do you think, Purushottam? Isn't this very nice?" Crossing the room, Prabhupada sat on the red velvet Vyasasan. He spoke and the audience was attentive. After praising the London center, the deity worship there, they expertly made puris for Radha and Krishna. He turned towards the altar and said, "If you clean the deity's utensils, your heart will become cleansed." By polishing the deity's paraphernalia, he said the devotees were cleansing their spiritual master's heart also. As he spoke, focusing simply and purely on devotion to the deity, the devotees suddenly realized the importance of this aspect of the Krishna consciousness. "Who has made these clothes?" Prabhupada asked, glancing at Radha and Krishna's little flounced dresses. "Saradiya," a few devotees called out. Prabhupada smiled. "Thank you very much." Then he threw back his head and laughed. "Is Saradiya still fighting with her husband?" The devotees and guests laughed while Saradiya covered her face with her hands. "Don't fight with your husband," Prabhupada said. "He is a good boy. Anybody that comes to Krishna consciousness is good." He then asked to see the rest of the house. So here, Prabhupada was coming to that temple room, which is on the second floor. It was already full with 150 disciples. And even though it was cold, Prabhupada only did not wear any coat. He just had the cotton robes and a sweater, but he still was very bright. And Prabhupada approached the altar and he started noticing everything there, the Radha Krishna deities, and then the larger deities of Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra, and then the picture of Lord Chaitanya and the Sankirtan party, the paraphernalia, and he made a remark to Purushottam, like how it is, isn't this very nice? Then Prabhupada walked across the room. He came onto the red velvet Vyasasan, and he praised the London Center about the deity worship, the expertly made puris, and then he turns to the altar and says that if you clean the deity's utensils, your heart will become cleansed, and by polishing the deities, you are actually cleaning the deity's paraphernalia. You're actually cleaning the spiritual master's heart. And he also asks who made the clothes, and that if some devotees called out Saradhya, and he basically he says thank you, and he asks Saradhya that if she is still fighting with her husband, and Saradhya covered her face, and Prabhupada tells her that don't fight with your husband. He's a good boy, because and anybody that comes to Krishna consciousness, he's good.
That's interesting. Prabhupada says, you still fight with your husband. He said, I still fight with the husband. Prasanti, please.
A 100 devotees, straining to see and hear Prabhupada's responses, followed him as he went downstairs. Although the crowd surrounded him, he remained relaxed and unhurried. He entered the press room, a long hall directly beneath the temple room. A large old offset press, a paper cutter, a folder, and flats of paper stock filled the room, which smelled like a print shop. Advaita, the press manager, bowed down in his green khakis before Prabhupada. He rose up smilingly, and Prabhupada stepped forward and embraced him, putting his arm around Advaita's head. Very good, he said. Standing before the printing press, Prabhupada folded his palms together and offered a prayer to his spiritual master. Jai Om Vishnupada Paramahamsa Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Advaita asked Prabhupada to give the press a transcendental name, ISKCON Press. Prabhupada said matter-of-factly, as if it had already been named. Keep all the machines very clean, Prabhupada said, and they will last a long time. This is the heart of ISKCON. You are the heart of ISKCON, Prabhupada, the devotee said, and this is my heart, said Prabhupada. Leaving the main press room, Prabhupada toured the other press facilities, squeezing in, ducking under, standing on tiptoe. The crowd of devotees followed him step by step. He peeked into a little cubby hole where a devotee was composing type. The typesetters, he said, should proceed very softly, very slowly at first, and in that way they would become expert. Turning to Advaita, he said, everyone in India who speaks Hindi has a Gita Press publication. So everyone who speaks English should have a ISKCON Press publication. Compared to most authors, Prabhupada's literary contribution was already substantial, but he wasn't just an author. His mission was to flood the world with literature glorifying Lord Krishna. Prabhupada's ISKCON was now 3 years old, yet his disciples were only beginning to execute his plans for printing and distributing transcendental literature. So hundreds of devotees were present there, trying to have a glimpse of Prabhupada, and they followed him downstairs where the press room was present, and it smelled like a print shop with all the paper cutter and paper stock filled the room. And Advaita, the press manager, he bowed to Prabhupada, and immediately Prabhupada embraced him putting his arm around Advaita's head. Very good, he said. And then he offered obeisances to his spiritual master and offered a prayer to him. And then he named, when someone asked what was the name of the press, of that press, he said it is ISKCON press, as if it is already named. And also advised everybody to keep the machinery very clean so that it will last long. Um, and this is the heart of ISKCON. And somebody remarked that you are the heart of ISKCON, and Prabhupada quoted that this press is my heart. And everybody followed Prabhupada as he was inspecting other places. Then he saw the typesetters and he advised them to start very slowly so that they will become an expert. And as Gita Press publication is present in everybody's home, the same way, whoever reads English should have a ISKCON Press publication. And compared to most authors, Prabhupada's contribution is substantial, and ISKCON is now 3 years old, and his disciples are executing his plans for printing and distributing.
Thank you. Vijayanand, please.
Printing was an important step, the first step. Months ago, Prabhupada had written, the press must work on continuously and we shall produce immense volumes of literature. If the press goes on nicely, I shall be able to give you material for publishing a book every 2 months. We have got so much material for the Krishna consciousness movement. And just prior to coming to Boston, he had written, Sankirtan and distributing back to Godhead and our other literatures is the field work of this movement. Temple worship is secondary. Now ISKCON was printing 50,000 copies of Back to Head per month, and Prabhupada hoped to increase the sales more and more. Standing in the crowded, chilly basement, surrounded by devotees, brush machines, and transcendental literature, Prabhupada described how he wanted ISKCON press to operate. He said that after dictating a tape, he would mail it to Boston to be transcribed. The transcription should take no more than 2 days. During the next 2 days, someone would edit the transcript manuscript. Then another editor would take 2 days to edit the transcript a second time. A Sanskrit editor would add diacritical markings and the manuscript would be ready for composing. Prabhupada said he could produce 15 tapes, 300 manuscript pages every month. At that rate, ISKCON Press should produce a book every 2 months or 6 books in a year. Prabhupada wanted to print at least 60 books. Therefore, his press workers would have plenty to do for the next 10 years. If the devotees simply printed his books innocently, he said, even if they had to work 24 hours a day in shifts, it would give him great delight. He was ready, if necessary, to drop all his activities except for publishing books. This was the special nectar the press devotees was hankering to hear. Printing books was Prabhupada's heart. It was the thing most dear to him. So here, Prabhupada is mentioning about like what should be the instructions for the people in the printing press, and he was also giving them like instructions what should do. So that he was mentioning like the press should work continuously, and it can produce like huge volumes of literature. And if he was saying like if the press is going nice, then he would be able to give the material for publishing a book every 2 months. So and so that he was saying like they will be having like enough material for the Krishna conscious movement. And before coming to Boston, he was writing like Sankirtan and distributing the Back to Godhead and other literature is the field work of the movement, and the deity worship was like secondary. And like at that time, like ISKCON was printing like 50,000 copies of Back to Godhead, and he was hoping to increase the count more. And in the crowd in the basement, surrounded by the devotees and the brush machines, so he was giving instruction like how the ISKCON press should work. He was saying like he after dictating a tape, he would mail it to the Boston to be transcribed, and the transcription should not take more than 2 days, and in the next 2 days, someone should edit the transcript, and there should be another editor who should take 2 days to edit the transcripts for the second time. And there should be a Sanskrit editor on the manuscript who will add the diacritical markings, and then the manuscript will be ready for the composing. So he was mentioning like he can produce 15 tapes, 300 manuscripts every month. At that rate, ISKCON should be in a position to produce a book every 2 months, or like 6 months, 6 books a year. And he wanted to print like 60 books, at least 60 books, and so that his press workers were having like a lot of work to do for the next 10 years. And even if his devotees were spending time for 24 hours a day in shifts, he felt that he will be very delighted. And also he is okay to drop all his activities and to concentrate only on book publishing. And also Prabhupada already mentioned, like printing books was his heart, and it was the most dear to him.
Unbelievable, isn't it? How he wanted to print 24 hours. He will have it ready for next 10 years. In this press work would have plenty to do for the next 10 years. It means how much Prabhupada was really willing to work. And it says 60 books, actually it came out to be, I think, 80 books or something. It's not an easy to have this translated to books. For us, it's not a very easy thing, I'm telling you. Not only books, the contents of the books are so perfect, so pure. Because the world intellectuals and so many people are reading and they cannot find any fault in it. Every place there's a consistency. We are discussing so many things and there's a consistency. It's an amazing work. Okay. This is the special nectar the press devotees were hankering to hear. Printing books was Prabhupada's heart. It was the thing most dear to him. During Prabhupada's week in Boston, Purushottama continued as secretary and servant out of duty. His difficulties in London had increased. Doubtful and morose. He came before Prabhupada 2 days before their departure. Purushottama, I had decided to live in London. I just felt like there were different things I wanted to do, but I felt obligated to stay with him because he needed me there. It was my job to at least getting back to the States. I felt that he needed someone to travel with him. And I just felt that I should complete that, have everything in order, so I couldn't stay to myself that I had just quit when he needed me like that in a foreign country. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't speak against him or anything. I performed my duties, but in my attitude, I let him know I was really getting kind of distant in the last few days. I didn't bow down to him. I would come in, but I just wouldn't bow down to him. So he entered Prabhupada's room. He didn't bow down, he stood. He was too uncomfortable to sit because of the gravity of what he would say. Prabhupada looked up from his desk. Yes, Purushottama. Purushottama, I went in to see him. I knew I was going to leave, but it kind of made me sick to do it. Anyway, I told him I have a lot of questions about the movement, the moon and everything. I just don't believe all of this. He was very congenial about the whole thing. He took it nicely. He said to me, if you have questions, why don't you ask me? And I said, you yourself have said that we shouldn't only ask questions to somebody we feel we can believe or trust. He looked very hurt. He knew what I was saying. I felt like I really hurt him. I didn't mean it to be so defiant, but there I was. He said, I have noticed that you haven't been well lately. You have had some problems? I said, well, I haven't been trying to hide it. I guess I was trying to prepare him for what was coming. I wanted to leave that night. So I said, I wanted to leave, but he said to me, you have been with me so long, and now you are so anxious to go. You can't even stay a night, he said. Why don't you stay at least till my plane leaves? That was 2 days later. I said, okay, I will do that then. I was going to go back to New York. Actually, I didn't have the money for the ticket, and he gave me the money. He gave me the bus fare. I really appreciated that. I could have borrowed some money from someone else, but he said, "Well, you take it, and you can pay me back later." And I did. I gave it back the next week. He was very gracious about the whole thing. Actually, I could see that he had a very special, loving way of looking at the world. I felt that sometimes I could see things in a loving way, like he did, and I realized that I got that viewpoint from him. You know, that little loving spirit. So he had that, and I kind of caught some of that from him, and that's one of the thing I always remember about him. And I know that I know that through his movement, and I know that through his movement, I came to believe in God. Before I met him, I didn't believe in God. So here's the thing. Purushottama looks like he was having little uneasy, little trouble before itself because of his minds and everything. He didn't have a complete faith in spiritual master. He didn't have a complete faith in the process that we looked like, but he had some commitment level. Now, spiritual master is saying something, and he has his own concoctions, understanding. So, so this is what happened. At least he was patiently waiting. He was saying, "I wanted to leave that time in London itself, but he was patiently waiting something." And he came here. Because he didn't want to leave Prabhupada alone. Something he was saying that I don't know why he gave company first of all. So anyway, he came back because he's an American. He's not a British. So he came here and he brought Prabhupada, and after things now he's hesitating to say something, revealing his heart. Prabhupada was very friendly. He didn't mind much, but I can understand how Prabhupada would be going through his pain in his heart. Coming is one thing and staying is another thing, because if you're not sincere, if you're not committed, then it's going to be very hard. And we see that. It is said that one should give at least one lifetime, never leave the association. If you leave the association, then you lost everything in your life. Again, we take the human birth. So this is the situation where Purushottama wanted to leave. Prabhupada said, okay, at least stay until I am here. Not leave after 2 days. So he agreed. Prabhupada gave him the bus fare to New York, and he appreciated that. He said that I remember I learned things that realized that I got that viewpoint of seeing in a special loving way, looking at the world. So he learned from Prabhupada, and he remembers this. And he also said that I came through his movement, I came to believe in God. Before I met him, I didn't believe in God at all. So that was his situation. So that's the big thing, at least he carried. Got it?
After Purushottama left, Prabhupada spoke with Bhavananda about Purushottam's doubts concerning the moon landing and his consequent doubts of Krishna consciousness. I can understand that he might not accept it because I said it, but how could he disbelieve the Vedic Shastras? Boston's weather was miserable. When the rain stopped, the snow fell, and when the snow stopped, the rain came again. Prabhupada tried taking a walk in the front yard. Bhavananda beside him with the umbrella, watching cautiously to guard him from falling on the ice. But after a week of Boston's nasty December weather, Prabhupada's cold was getting worse. He would go to Los Angeles. Los Angeles, February 25th, 1970. On the auspicious occasion of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's appearance day anniversary, the Los Angeles devotees received permission to enter the new temple on Watseka Avenue. Rooms had not even been cleaned, and the large hall was bare, but the devotees brought in Prabhupada's Vyasasan from the old temple on La Cienega, and Prabhupada had them place it on the large had them place on it a large picture of his spiritual master. Standing before his spiritual master, Prabhupada offered arti, while some 50 disciples gathered around him, chanting Hare Krishna and dancing in the otherwise empty hall. After the arti, Prabhupada directed his disciples in offering flowers to the picture of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Then, still standing before the Vyasa-asana, he said he had nothing to offer his spiritual master on this day except his own disciples. He then read aloud the names of all his disciples. Taking his seat on a low Vyasa-asana beside the large Vyasa-asana of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Prabhupada gave a short history of his Guru Maharaj, son of Bhaktivinoda Thakur and powerful Acharya of the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. As Prabhupada recalled his first meeting with the spiritual master, he told how Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had told him to teach Krishna consciousness to the English-speaking world. This large new temple, Prabhupada said, had been provided by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati as a gift for the devotees to use in Krishna's service. They should not become attached to the opulence, Prabhupada said, but they should use this wonderful place for preaching. As he spoke, he wept. So, Prabhupada, after Purushottam left, Prabhupada spoke about Purushottam's doubts and his doubt about the moon landing and the doubts of Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada says that he doesn't understand why he won't accept it, because how could he disbelieve the Vedic Sastras? And Prabhupada's cold was getting worse because of the Boston's nasty weather, and they had gone out for a walk. But now Prabhupada's deciding to go to Los Angeles. And Los Angeles, on the auspicious location of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's appearance day, the devotees had got access and permission to enter the new temple on Watseka Avenue. And even though the place was unclean and the hall was bare, the devotees still brought in Prabhupada's Vyasa-asana. And Prabhupada had the devotees place a large picture of his spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And standing before his spiritual master, Prabhupada offered arti, and the devotees were chanting the Hare Krishna and dancing. And Prabhupada taught them how to offer the flowers, the picture of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And then standing before the picture, he said that he was saying to spiritual master that he had nothing to offer except his own disciples. And then he read aloud all the names of the disciples. Then, taking his seat on a lower Vyasa-asana, Prabhupada gave a short history of his Guru Maharaj, how he was the son of Bhaktivinoda Thakur and a powerful Acharya of the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And in his first meeting with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he was told by him to preach to the English-speaking world. And now this new temple is really a gift from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur to be used in Krishna service and not to be attached to the material opulence from it. And as he spoke, he started crying in separation.
Nipa?
Now bring the prasadam. Prabhupada called, and the feast began. While devotees sat on the floors in rows, Prabhupada from his Vyasana directed the servers, having them bring another samosa to one devotee, more chutney to another, and so on. He watched over all of them, encouraging them to take Krishna's prasadam. That afternoon, Prabhupada toured the buildings. In addition to the main hall, which he would have the devotees convert into a temple, he saw the equally large lecture hall. These rooms, plus a 3-room apartment, ample separate quarters for male and female devotees, a parking lot, and a front lawn made this the finest physical facility in all the ISKCON. We don't require such a nice place for ourselves, Prabhupada told the temple president, Garga Muni. We are prepared to live anywhere, but such a nice place will give us opportunity to invite gentlemen to come and learn about this Krishna consciousness. The cost of the building that had been $225,000 with a $50,000 down payment. Prabhupada had more than $10,000 in his book fund, but that was exclusively for printing books. So although he usually didn't like to deal personally in such negotiations, he had made an exception in this case and had asked the other temples to donate to the new world headquarters in Los Angeles. He had even mailed snapshots of the building to various temple presidents around the world. Thus, he had collected the down payment, and on Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati's appearance day, ISKCON became the legal owner. This was the only temple ISKCON actually owned. All other buildings were leased or rented, and Prabhupada wanted to design everything himself. Hiring professionals would be too expensive, but Prabhupada had plenty of disciples eager to do the renovation. Karan Dhara knew a little carpentry, plumbing, and general construction, and he could learn more by experience. Bhavananda had been a professional designer, and he was filled with Prabhupada's enthusiasm to transform the plain church into a dazzling palace for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. First, you make my apartment, Prabhupada told Bhavananda. Let me move in, and then we will work on the temple room. Here, Prabhupada is asking for prasadam to be served while devotees was sitting on the floors and rows. Prabhupada from his Vyasana directed the servers to serve someone samosa, someone chutney, and so on. So he was watching and encouraging them to take Krishna's prasadam. And that afternoon, Prabhupada also toured around the buildings. In addition to the main hall, which the devotees would convert into temple, he saw equally large lecture hall. There were rooms plus a three-room apartment, ample separate quarters for males, females, parking lot, front lawn, made this the finest physical facility for ISKCON. And Prabhupada said, like, we don't require such a nice place for ourselves. And Gargamuni said, we are prepared to live anywhere, but a nice place will give opportunity to invite gentlemen to visit Krishna consciousness. The cost of the building was estimated to be $225,000 with a $50,000 down payment. Prabhupada had like $10,000 in his book fund, but which was actually kept for printing books. So although he was usually he didn't like to deal personally in such negotiations, he made an exception in this case and asked the other temples to donate for the to the new world headquarters in Los Angeles. He had mailed snapshots of the building to the various presidents across the world, and he had collected the down payment. And on the day of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati's appearance day, ISKCON became the legal owner. So this was the only temple ISKCON actually had owned. All buildings others were like leased or rented, and Prabhupada wanted everything to be designed by himself. Hiring professors would be actually expensive and would be like a lot of money involved. So Prabhupada had plenty of disciples who were ready to do the renovations by themselves. Like Karnadhara, he knew carpentry, plumbing, and general construction and could have learned more by experience. And Bhavananda was another professional designer. He was filled with Prabhupada's enthusiasm to transform the plain church into a supreme personality of Godhead. And first, you make my apartment, Prabhupada told Bhavananda. And so they let me move in, and then we will work on the temple room.
Very nice. Second group.
Bhavananda, we picked out a part of the Los Angeles temple for Prabhupada's quarters, and Karandara built a bathroom. When Prabhupada came up to the rooms, he said, "This will be my sitting room, this will be my bedroom." And when he came to a third room with a skylight, he said, "This will be my library." Prabhupada told me once in Boston that as a child he had lived in a palace with the blue walls, red marble floors, and orange and gold trim, the Mullik's house in Calcutta. So we painted the walls of his sitting room blue, and I put in a white tile floor. The drapes were burnt orange satin with gold cords and gold fringe. Prabhupada liked this color scheme very much. In the bedroom, I asked Prabhupada where he wanted his bed, and he said, "Put the bed in the middle of the room." We had put down a rug, and Prabhupada said, "Now you should get sheets and cover the rug with them." In India, they have rugs like this, nice rugs, and they cover them with sheets. And on special days, they take the sheets off. Otherwise, they would become ruined. So I went out and bought sheets. Prabhupada was in his sitting room when I came in and started putting the sheet over the rug in the bedroom. Prabhupada came in and said, "Yes, this is very nice. Again, I have introduced something new. This is something new for all of you, sheets on rugs." Then he told me, "Now make sure there are no wrinkles in the sheet." I was on my hands and knees on the rug, and Prabhupada also got down on his hands and knees right next to me. We were both pressing out the wrinkles from the sheet, and when we got to the end, Prabhupada folded the sheet under the rug. He was happy there because it was our own place. We had never had our own place before. In the temple room, Prabhupada showed Karandara where to build the 3 altars. He indicated the measurements and instructed that before each altar should be a pair of doors and cover them and over them the symbols of Vishnu, a conch shell over the altar for Guru and Gaurang, a wheel and cup over Radha and Krishna's altar in the center, and a lotus over Lord Jagannath. The spiritual master's Vyasasana was to go at the opposite end of the temple facing Radha and Krishna. The walls should be yellow, which Prabhupada said was in the mode of goodness. The ceiling should be covered with a canopy and there should be chandeliers. So here, Bhavananda was helping build the Prabhupada's quarters in the Los Angeles temple. So he built a bathroom and Prabhupada shows him which room will be sitting room, the bedroom, and then his library. And Prabhupada told Bhavananda about a rich house. When he stayed at the Mullik's house in Calcutta, like how that house looked, and basically Bhavananda used the same color scheme. So he had the sitting room blue, the walls of the sitting room, and then white tile floor, and he had the drapes. Prabhupada likes this color scheme. And in the bedroom, Prabhupada had him put the bed in the middle of the room and also the rug. And Prabhupada asked him to get sheets and cover the rug with them. And Prabhupada tells that in India they have sheets on the rug so that way they don't get ruined. And Prabhupada basically tells that, hey, this is something new that he has introduced, like placing the sheet over the rug. And he and Bhavananda actually make sure that there were no wrinkles in the sheet, and he put the sheet on the rug. And Bhavananda says that Prabhupada was happy there because it was the own place, and this was the first time ISKCON had an own temple. And in the temple room, Prabhupada showed Karnandra way to build the altars, and also that each altar should have a pair of doors, and over the doors there should be the symbols of Vishnu, a conch shell over the altar for Guru and Gaurang, and then a wheel and club over the altar for Radha and Krishna, and a lotus over the altar of Lord Jagannath. And Vyasasana was in the opposite side. And here he says that the color should be yellow, which is in the mode of goodness. And there should be a canopy and chandeliers.
That place is now is a museum, Prabhupada's museum. I've never been there, but I heard a lot about this. A lot of devotees came from that place, from the center. It's a very happy moment to have it. Prasanthi, please read.
Once the altars were completed, Prabhupada wanted to bring deities, even though much of the renovation was yet unfinished. After constructing an umbrella-covered cart and decorating it with flowers, the devotees brought the deities in procession from the old temple at Las Cienega Boulevard to their new home, Bhavananda. The first time he came into the temple room after his morning walk, he went to the Guru Gauranga altar and paid his obeisances. We all paid our obeisances. Then he stood up and went to Radha and Krishna, and then paid obeisances there to Jagannatha, and we all followed. Then we walked back, and he sat on his Vyasasana, and he told us, now you line up facing each other from the Vyasasana to Radha and Krishna face each other. Now you line up facing each other from the Vyasasana to Radha and Krishna face each other. This way, that way, one way you look is Guru, and the other way God. and then back and forth that way. Always leave this aisle, he said, so I can see. The deity was the king, Prabhupada said, and all the temple residents were his personal servants. The temple, therefore, should be like a palace. An elaborate temple was important for preaching. Prabhupada explained, because most people, especially Westerners, were not inclined to undergo any austerities for obtaining spiritual life. There was an Indian saying, no one listens to a poor man, were the devotees to advertise classes on bhakti yoga in such and such empty field under a certain tree. Prabhupada said, no one would come, but a clean, beautiful building with chandeliers and comfortable rooms would attract many people to visit and become purified. So once the altars were completed, Prabhupada wanted to bring the deities. And in the umbrella covered cart, they brought the deities from the old temple to the new temple as a procession. And Bhavananda says, first time he came to the temple from the morning walk, he first offered obeisances to the Guru Gauranga altar, at the Guru Gauranga altar, and then he stood up and went to Radha and Krishna, and then went to the Jagannatha altar. And then he sat in the Vyasasana, and he made the devotees sit as two groups facing each other, and the middle aisle left empty so that he can see Radha and Krishna. And devotees, when they turn one side, they can see Radha and Krishna, God, and the other side, when they turn their head, they can see the spiritual master. So he explained the seating as well. And then he also explains how the deity is supposed to be like a king and the temple is supposed to be like a palace. And an elaborate temple is very important for preaching. And he also says that, Prabhuji, I did not understand this Indian saying, no one listens to a poor man, where the devotees to advertise classes on bhakti yoga in such and such empty field under a certain tree. So looks like if somebody explains under a tree, they won't listen to that poor man. But if the building is very clean.
That's right. That's why Krishna says, yad yad achat. Through opulence also you can attract, if you, as a saintly life, as a devotee life, you don't need anything, right? You live very simple, and that's the way Indians present it. But if you do things, you cannot attract people. So if you show that you're just a saint, renounced, then no one will be attracted. But this, if you have a nice facility and everything, and people will be attracted. That's why many times for something you have to invite some very influential person who is well-known, famous person, because he's a fame. So people come to listen, then they listen about Krishna. Sometimes you invite a rich man, sometimes you invite a politician. So similarly, temple also, the deity is the king, he can enjoy, but devotee is not needed. Actually, deities can be served anywhere. In order to attract people, sometimes you need a nice temple. Okay. Many people come, and they say, oh, I want to see a nice building. For that sake itself, they come, many people. Does it make sense?
Yes, Guruji.
It's the fact. No one likes. If you start living renounced and everything, no one will like us. That's why Krishna is kind. If we are not living like in a forest, eating some leaf or some fruits like that. Everybody's eating nice prasadam, varieties. Singing, dancing. Temples are supposed to be opulent. But in Delaware we are still coming up. We'll see. I don't know what is Krishna's plan. all of you are getting inspiration in all these things. Now maybe everyone work together and makes this bring miracles. Miracles will come.
Prabhuji, so I
Huh.
had one more question. Like it says like you need like good temples and everything to attract people. So is it true for like people also to become big or famous? They also need some big people's validation. Otherwise, you cannot do anything on your own.
On spiritual wise or material wise?
Both.
Both. Yeah. You know what happens if you get some what do you call endorsement
Yeah.
someone, it's very easy to get into. Okay, if you get endorsement of someone, some highly already established, because they may not trust you as an ordinary person, but if you connect, okay, he's the industrialist, as he take his endorsement, people know him. Okay, this man people trust because there's the opulences. One is fame, one is strength, the third is beauty. Not only that, if you that's why you see on the board while driving, there's always beautiful man and women's pictures. And what they'll be holding a bottle, wine bottle, or cigarette. All they have to do, they do, but at least something is attractive. All attractions are opulences of Krishna. Third Aishwarya. There are 6 opulences comes from Krishna. Beautiful strength, the knowledgeable person. All these things are opulences which are attractive to the people in general. So, in order for us to establish that, sometime you have to approach a big person to take somebody who is famous. What will happen? Others will follow. Krishna says that. Whatever the famous person leaders do, other people will follow. And that's the whole business you see, especially in the material world, so much of advertisement. A player will be advertising, a cinema actor will be advertising, an industrialist will be advertising, and a politician will be advertising, and all these things. So that is there in order to, not only that, you all notice that sometimes people take selfie.
Yes. Yes.
And what do they take selfie? They will not take selfie with any poor man. Oh, here's Tata, Ratan Tata, I'll take a picture. Here's Bill Gates, I will take a picture. Actually, no one is taking picture with Bill Gates or Ratan Tata. Everyone is taking picture with opulence. Tomorrow Bill Gates becomes like, no money, no one will take picture. So these things, opulences are always attractive. And people are naturally attracted to those opulences. So similarly, in order to promote, you say, oh, Krishna, who is becoming devotee? No one is becoming devotee. No one. Why should we waste time? But then suddenly you find a George Harrison or Narendra Modi, or example, somebody become big, people take very openly this Krishna consciousness, then it's very easy, other people will also follow. Make sense?
Yes.
It is real. Bhakti doesn't need, but only to show that he is a big man. He is doing, what is your problem? Why don't you take it? Okay. Here the George Harrison has so much of money, so much of opulence. So basically, everything can be utilized in Krishna's service. Makes sense? However, they all are nothing in front of Krishna. But Krishna, when they use their abilities, they use their fame, name, everything, Krishna appreciates that. What are the opulences you have? You can serve Krishna in using that. So that's why Krishna said, at least speak something good about it. Good about me. You may not be doing, as rich man says, he is the Krishna conscious, very good. That's it. He is offering a service because he used his opulence in spreading Krishna consciousness. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. Makes sense? Okay, very good. Any other question? Any other question anyone has?
I had, but I'll ask you tomorrow.
You can ask me for 5 minutes. No problem.
We'll continue with reading, right?
Okay, yeah, you can ask tomorrow, no problem. I'm glad you're asking. We should ask these questions. And okay, you Prasant read right now. Vijan and Prabhu, you please read for us.
The temple was also for those who wanted to live there as Krishna conscious devotees. Devotees, Prabhupada said, should be willing to live and sleep anywhere. But as the loving, protecting father of his disciples, Prabhupada took great care to establish a large temple and an adequate dormitory facility. He was making a home for his family. To see that his spiritual children had a place to live and practice their devotional service was just another aspect of the mission, another aspect of his mission. A special feature of the new temple was Srila Prabhupada's garden. The devotees had excavated a large patch of concrete behind the temple, filled it with earth, surrounded it with a cinder block wall, and planted a lawn with the flower gardens all around. Karandara. I had dug some beds around along the inside perimeter and planted a plant here and a plant there. But Prabhupada said, no, plant something everywhere. Everywhere there should be something growing. Everywhere there is a place. You plant something, let there be growing everywhere. He wanted it overgrown like a jungle, a tropical area where plants just grow luxuriantly everywhere. Srila Prabhupada always enjoyed sitting in the garden in the evening with the fresh, cool evening air and the fragrance of the flowers. The topics of conversation in the garden are whereas varied as Srimad Bhagavatam, all different subjects. Sometimes there would be lively conversations with guests and devotees, and sometimes Prabhupada would spend the entire time just chanting with very little conversation. Sometimes Prabhupada would just have somebody read from the Krishna book. Prabhupada said that his mother maintained a garden on the roof of their house and when he was young, and that he would go up there in the evenings and play. He remembered that. He always remembered what he liked to do as a child. You would hear him reminisce with pleasure about it. Many times he would comment, my mother maintained a garden on the roof of our residence, and as a child, I would go there in the evening and play. Now I also have such a nice place to come. So this explains like Prabhupada's vision on building a temple. He was thinking, he was saying like there should be temple should be there so that the devotees, Krishna conscious devotees can live there. And also even though he mentioned that devotees should be willing to live or sleep anywhere, but as a father protecting his disciples, Prabhupada took a great care to build a larger temple with adequate dormitory facility. And also he would like to see his spiritual children a place to live and practice devotional service, which is another aspect of his mission. And there is in the temple, like there was a special feature which was the Srila Prabhupada's garden, because the devotees took off a large patch of the concrete behind the temple and filled it with earth, and they planted a lawn with flower gardens all around. So on Karandra was sharing his pastime, he was mentioning he was planting the plant here and there like very randomly, but Prabhupada requested him to plant everywhere and to grow the place as a jungle and a tropical area where plants can go luxuriantly. Little down, Prabhu. Also, Prabhupada, he always enjoyed sitting in the garden in the evening with cool air and the fragrance of flowers, and they would used to have several conversation with various topics ranging starting from Srimad Bhagavatam to different subjects. And also sometimes he will not speak much; he will just do chanting, and sometimes he would just read from the Krishna book. And also, Prabhupada was remembering his childhood, where his mother maintained a garden at the roof of their house, and Prabhupada would go and play. And also, so he was now here, since he is here in the temples, also they are having a big garden. So he was mentioning he was having a very nice place to come.
Nice, very good. Thank you so much. Prabhupada is really feeling in the first time something he had it. Looks like it first time he carried all these years. Anyway, he's a sannyasi and he won't be attached. Everything he's doing for Krishna, but something for his movement he had. It looks like he's really liking it. So I really appreciate all of your time. We will continue. AJ will not be joining for a week. He's in vacation. So as soon as it comes, maybe he said he will join from there also. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Prabhupada Lilamrita ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.